The morning air inside the glass skyscraper was sharp and filled with tension. Assistants hurried across polished marble floors, voices low, coffee cups trembling slightly whenever the elevator chimed. Everyone knew when he arrived. The silence that followed was unmistakable. Adrian Steele, billionaire CEO of Steel Industries, was a man who commanded rooms without raising his voice. Tall, impeccably dressed, and ruthlessly intelligent, he had built his empire on precision and control. But today that control was slipping. He slammed a file shut in his office, frustration darkening his usually calm expression. "This merger can't fall apart," he muttered. Not because of some ridiculous social requirement. His assistant, Emma Clarke, stood near the desk, holding her tablet nervously. She had worked for him for 3 years, long enough to know that when his jaw tightened like that, the storm was coming. "Sir, may I ask what the problem is?" she said carefully. Adrian leaned back in his chair, eyes narrowing. "The Chen family," he said. "They're old-fashioned, traditional. They believe in family values and stability. They refuse to finalize the deal with a man who isn't settled." Emma blinked. "You mean they want you to be married?" He gave a humorless smile. "Exactly. They don't trust single men in long-term commitments. So what will you do?" He looked at her for a long moment. Too long. And then slowly a plan began to form behind those cold gray eyes. "That depends," he said finally. "How convincing an actress are you, Miss Clarke?" Emma froze. "Sir?" Adrian stood, walking toward her, his presence overwhelming. "I need someone trustworthy, intelligent, and adaptable." He paused. "I need a wife, temporarily." Her heart stuttered. "You're not serious." "Oh, I am," he said. "You'll accompany me to Shanghai next week. You'll play the role of my wife until the contract is signed." Emma stared at him, utterly speechless. "Mr. Steele, I can't pretend to be your wife." "What if someone finds out? What if—" "Then the deal collapses," he interrupted smoothly. "And 1,000 employees lose their jobs." He knew exactly which words to use. Emma had seen firsthand how dedicated he was to his company. But she had also seen the lonely way he stared out his office window late at night, as though the view from the top came with a cost no one else understood. She swallowed hard. "And what exactly would this arrangement require?" Adrian leaned on the edge of his desk, his tone calm but firm. "You'll attend dinners, meetings, and social events with me. We'll maintain the appearance of a couple in love, nothing more. You'll be compensated generously." Her cheeks flushed. "So this is purely professional?" He hesitated for a fraction of a second before saying, "Yes." But something in his eyes said otherwise. Emma's life had never been luxurious. She worked hard, lived modestly, and never imagined stepping into the world of billionaires and high society. Pretending to be married to Adrian Steele sounded insane. Yet there was something in his voice, something vulnerable beneath the authority, that made her pause. "Why me?" she asked quietly. "Because I trust you," he said simply. "And because you're the only one who won't try to turn this into a tabloid circus." She exhaled slowly, knowing she was crossing a line she could never uncross. "All right," she whispered. "I'll do it." A faint, almost imperceptible smile touched his lips. "Good. Then we have a deal." A week later, the private jet touched down in Shanghai. Emma stepped out in a sleek navy dress, the one Adrian's stylist had chosen. Everything felt surreal. The cameras, the flashing lights, the reporters. And then Adrian took her hand. The contact sent a shock through her. "Just smile," he murmured, his breath warm against her ear. "You're Mrs. Steele now." Her heart raced as they walked together, his hand steady around hers. The crowd murmured. The photographers snapped. And somewhere in the chaos, Emma realized he wasn't acting at all. The way he looked at her, protective, possessive, didn't feel rehearsed. That night, at the gala dinner, she played her role perfectly. Adrian introduced her as his wife, and she smiled through every conversation, every toast. But when she caught him watching her from across the table, something inside her shifted. Later, when they returned to their penthouse suite, Emma finally let out a nervous laugh. "Well," she said, kicking off her heels, "I think I survived my first night as Mrs. Steele." Adrian loosened his tie, watching her quietly. You did better than I expected. Is that a compliment? She teased. It's an observation, he replied. But the corner of his mouth twitched. She turned away to hide her smile. The air between them grew thicker, warmer. She could feel his gaze even when she wasn't looking, but just as the tension began to settle between them, Adrian spoke again, and his next words caught her completely off guard. There's one more condition, he said softly. Emma frowned. Condition? Yes. He met her eyes, his tone lower now, serious. If you're going to play my wife, you'll have to stay with me. In the same room, her eyes widened. You mean? In public, he clarified quickly. It must look real. If anyone finds out we're sleeping in separate rooms, the illusion collapses. She stared at him, unsure whether to laugh or panic. You could have mentioned that before we landed. I didn't want to scare you off, he said, almost smirking. You're unbelievable. And you're brave, he countered softly. Most people would have walked away. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The city lights painted the room in gold and silver. Finally, she crossed her arms and said, Fine, but only for appearances. Of course, he said. But there was that look again, the one that made her pulse quicken. Over the following days, Emma learned more about Adrian than she ever expected to. He wasn't just powerful. He was guarded, lonely, and burdened by expectations. Late one night, she found him standing on the balcony, staring at the skyline. You know, she said quietly, for someone with everything, you don't seem very happy. He glanced at her, surprised by her honesty. Happiness is a distraction, he said. No, she replied softly. It's the reason you work so hard in the first place. He looked at her for a long time before saying, Maybe I forgot that. And as the week went on, something real began to grow between them, something neither of them had planned. What started as a business arrangement started to feel dangerously close to something else. On their final night in Shanghai, the deal was officially sealed. Adrian had everything he wanted: success, power, approval. Yet, as he looked at Emma laughing softly beside him, he realized that the one thing he hadn't expected was the only thing he couldn't afford to lose. When they returned to the hotel, he stopped her at the door. Emma, he said quietly, our agreement ends tomorrow. The deal is done, she nodded, her heart sinking. Right, so, this is goodbye? He hesitated, his usual composure cracking just slightly. It doesn't have to be, her breath caught. What do you mean? He took a step closer, eyes searching hers. We've been pretending all week, he said softly. But somewhere along the way, I stopped pretending. Her lips parted in shock, but before she could answer, he added with a faint smile. So, Mrs. Steele, what do you say we make it official for real this time? And for once, the man who built his empire on logic and deals found himself standing on the edge of something he couldn't control. Love.